Let's unpack the latest with Pyotr Kurzin, host of the Global Gambit. He joins us now from London. Pyotr, thanks once again for coming to us at France 24. Just a quick update, and we've had more words coming from Vladimir Putin, quite significant words, saying that he thinks the Ukraine war is coming to an end. What is your first reaction?
Well, one of surprise, actually, to be honest, and thank you as always for having me back. But I haven't heard that. That would be, to me, at least from my trying to think of it off the top of my head, the first time he said such an explicit statement as that. Let's keep in mind also, as you said in your report, this ceasefire was first floated by Moscow. Last year, there were a couple of occasions where they did it, but then Putin was like, maybe not. And then he kind of, violated it anyway over Easter or a couple of other, or Christmas Day and things like that. This is the first time that they've pushed for a multi-day ceasefire. And clearly, I mean, just look at Putin's body language in the period, this clip that is being shown next to me right now. He looks rattled. He doesn't look like a man who's in control of the situation, be that the economy or the broader internal situation. And I'd finish off by simply saying that, there's been rumblings of a coup. There's been a lot of anti-Russian propaganda or pro-Ukraine propaganda claiming power structures. We're not quite there, but we are certainly in a situation where the Kremlin is not in control of the situation, and Putin's power base looks very fragile.
Does that reflect the entire day that we've seen unfolded in front of us on Red Square today, in terms of the scaled back events, in terms of Putin's body language, as you say? What can you draw from it?
Well, yes, absolutely. And I'd explain simply why. Last year, we had the parade, which demonstrated, I think it was one single tank, T-34, which is symbolic of the Great Patriotic War, as it's known in Russia, the Second World War. The T-34 is a very simple, like the sort of tank version of the Kalashnikov, of the AK-47, and it overwhelmed the Panzers and the Tigers and the German sophisticated tanks at the time. But it was only one. There was no modern. Compare this to 5-6 years ago, when the T-14 Armata, which is the most modern variant of the Russian tank, was being floated in front of all the other more recent tanks that have obviously been destroyed or involved in the war. So to have no hardware at all, there wasn't even ICBMs. There was no intercontinental ballistic missiles, despite in the past year, I would also remind viewers that Putin has been floating and bragging around this idea of the Oreshnik missile, which is actually a missile from 2011. But the point is that a lot of Russian propagandists, military bloggers were talking about the military prowess of the Russian state and the Oreshnik missile, or what's known as an IRBM, so intermediate ballistic missile, being able to threaten Ukraine or parts of Europe. So none of that, no rocket launchers, no heavy military equipment at all. And of course, the lack of dignitaries there to solidify the legitimacy of the war. It's sort of almost like Trump's board of peace. Right, it's not exactly filled with the most powerful nation states.
And we do see Alexander Lukashenko, the Belarus president, strongman president there with Vladimir Putin. Fico, the Slovakian, he wasn't there at the actual event, but he was there on the sidelines, and he did also meet with Putin. Nonetheless, it points to exactly what you say in terms of posturing. This is really just a propaganda war, in effect. So what you're talking about, the Ukrainians versus the Russians, what they're saying. Are we at a stage right now where what is being said in terms of the information warfare, is that mattering more than what's actually happening on the battlefield?
I mean, yeah, in the simplest sense, it is. We can draw a parallel with the situation in Hormuz. This week, we've had Project Freedom and the whole build-up of tensions over the Strait of Hormuz, the Iranians claiming that they had targeted a missile, but then actually they hadn't. That was just the media getting carried away, and the IRGC having to walk that back, and the Americans clarifying their position. Both sides basically threatening, making escalatory rhetoric, but actually not following through with action. And it's the same with the war in Ukraine. Right now, I mean, we shouldn't underestimate the Russians' capability to adapt. The Russians have developed a very notable set of drone capabilities and other warfare, right? This is still a country that was critical in winning World War II. We wouldn't have won it in the West without the role of the Soviets, and I think that should be recognized. But at the same time, no, the Russians are losing, I think it was 350,000 troops last year. That was the estimation I saw earlier today from the Institute of Study of War. So the Russians are losing people left, right, and center. And this obviously bleeds into the economy. It bleeds into Putin's ability to project a sense of not only confidence, but also protection of the country. The whole reason he ran on a platform of protecting Russia and its people, or projecting Russia as a great power. So it's the information warfare is critical.
Yeah. And I wonder if that is why he is now inclined to talk about meeting Zelensky face to face. He says, and these are more fresh comments. Just firstly, he says that Moscow has still not received any proposals from Ukraine on a prisoner of war swap. That was slated for 1,000 on each side. And he's also added that he'll only meet Zelensky after a peace deal. But does that make negotiations impossible by design?
Well, I mean, okay, firstly, let's just address the prisoners of war things. These two have swapped POWs multiple times throughout the conflict. When Russia wants to engage in diplomatic maneuvering or whatever engagements, action like POWs, they do. So there is a demonstration that POWs are relatively simple. They don't carry too much significance outside of simply swapping the people. It's not like you're trying to get the deal done. So that I wouldn't draw too much from that. Second, though, to the broader point around not meeting Zelensky, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, to be honest. All that demonstrates to me it's critical that you've just shared that with me, because it just shows that there's no real intention for true engagement for peace. But clearly, Putin is trying to project the right amount of commentary to onlookers, right? At the end of the day, this is still about the US, it's still about China, it's still about other, maybe the Europeans to an extent. Putin is trying to demonstrate that he is interested in peace, but it's those pesky Ukrainians, the warmongering Ukrainians with the support of the Europeans, that are keeping this war going, right? This is the narrative that the Kremlin will probably try to emphasize. You know, you could talk about engaging in peace talks, but if you're not willing to meet the guy who's head of the nation state that you're fighting, then you're not really interested in peace. And I would end with simply stating, because that is how Putin, as I said probably the last time I was on with you, that's how Putin perceives the world. It's great power politics. He does not see Ukraine, and therefore Zelensky, as a legitimate head of state. He only wants to talk to the United States, or on occasion Europe, because they are threatening him. When Putin feels threatened, then he talks to them. But clearly, he doesn't want to give that legitimization to Zelensky and Ukraine, because that would go against everything that he claims this war is about.
Pyotr, as always, thank you so much for your fascinating views on the topic. Let's take that exact point now to Kharkiv with our correspondent there, Emmanuel Shaz.